Hey everybody, this is Frankie Day Models. Okay, this beautiful Monday, my day off. Be live action today. We're gonna go ahead and do some pre-shading on my airfix 24 scale Stuka, and I'm gonna go ahead also after pre-shading is all done. Let's start preparing the paints to get this thing painted. Okay, I got everything all masked down by using tissue and stuff. I got the sides on the counting. They're not glued in there; they all come off. So I'm going to make it movable so you can reveal that Delmar brand engine to use, Delmar Benz, what do you call it. And we're going to do some pre-shading of this thing. And everything else will be done off camera and make videos so it's all done. I have that dotless drawing right now. I should have found a final reveal for that. It should be either by this evening or tomorrow, whenever I get to it, guys. I keep on putting things ahead of schedule, think I get done. There's always something in the way. It stops you doing something, and it kind of makes you get behind everything. So I'm gonna try to get the reveal for that. Also the swordfish, get that going. But right now, I want to get this beautiful Stuka here done. I enjoy this airfix kit. I've had this thing for years. I think I paid about I don't know how much I bought that thing at the hobby shop, Red Baron Hobby Shop, out there in Camarillo, California, and there was a nice hobby shop out when I was living out there. When I was stationed in the service and everything, in the Navy, and I used to go to the hobby shop all the time when I was young. And I went there one day and ventured in, came home from leave, and they had this one set 24 scale Stuka. It's under the labeling of it's Airfix, yeah. It has a diamond on the box like that. And I bought it. Actually, I bought two of them. And the first one I built, I sold to a friend of mine. He wanted it really bad in his collection. As I, what the hell, that's why I bought another one. I forget what let him have it for, but he was happy. And so I bought the second one. This is the second one I'm building. This is actually a fun build. I thought it was a group build. I went back and reviewed all my videos from the past, and I found out there was no group build on this. This was just a fun build, and I started this about actually a year ago from today. This was last touched by these hands. So they're going to be retouched again by doing some pre-shading and painting. Okay, you guys get your favorite kit or whatever you want to do and favorite beverage and snack and join along with me, or just watch for fun or poke fun. And I'll have a live action video going for you. And it's probably going to be about a good 45 minutes, maybe, I'm thinking. Probably take you that long as this thing appreciate it. And go from there. Okay, as building this kit, there's no fit issues in this thing at all. Just get to follow the instructions. Now, I heard a trumpeter makes a 124 scale. I'm kind of skittish. I'm kind of skittish a little bit on not the scale. So, well, yeah, the trumpeter makes a 124 scale. It looks like it's. I don't have that kit. I've seen it on the tube here. One of the model builders is building one, and it looks like it's a lot more bigger than the 124 scale. So I don't know if there's if both scales are the same thing, or I know it. I know these went to different versions, like all aircrafts do, but they don't change the dimensions of the aircraft, probably just the power plant and the efficiency of it. which can be upgraded a lot more better than it was designed. But as speculators, as the length of the fuselage and wings and such, I don't think they interfere with the size of the airplane. I think maybe, I don't know. I don't know. But all I know is I like this one better. Last scene of the Trumper one, it's too I don't know, something about it doesn't look right. This thing here looks spot on. It does. It really does. I know this kit came out back in 1975. I bought this back in 76 or 77. I knew the kit came out back in 1975, just right after the Hawker Hurricane it came out. It was very, the first one I built was molded in blue plastic. What's freakish about this is it was molded in white plastic. Just like the Tamiya Lancasters now they make. It used to be molded in black plastic. Now they're molded in gray plastic. Get out of here. Again, black ants around here. And okay. Without further ado, grab your favorite beverage, snack, kit, smoke a good cigar, pipe, or a cigarette or something, and just sit there and just relax. And I'll try to soothe your cares away with the noise of an airbrush for 45 minutes. And make a final inspection for closing out the video. I worked on my Lancaster last night. I got all the cowlings done on it. And I got to do a little more sanding on it like this and go ahead and prime it and give it a... That too is going to probably be live action on the pre-shading of my lank. And I worked on the Dauntless last night. Got all the decals done on it. It's all finished. All it needs is bombs and paint side eye brakes red and take out the vastings. Also, finally be painting the prop and the exhaust and the yellow darn. So I should have that all done by the night. I'm gonna post a live action, but find a real deal for that too as well. Okay, I got myself in a not a precarious situation. I got myself in a situation. These things got to be finished. So I got the Speedy D almost done. Now I'm going to get this thing finished. Okay, without further ado, we'll swing on the camera. I'll be using two cameras on this. And you guys see what the heck I'm doing here. Be like everybody else. Can't have live action, not close-ups. Okay. I'm going to swing the camera around, change cameras out here when I get hot on the on this right now. So join with me and let's have some fun getting the pre-shade done on the mighty Stuka. Okay, here we go, boys.
Be very careful and hold it.
Okay, here we go, boys.
Certain openings in it, in a tent city, they had better and that's when we got involved in a evacuation in Australian commandos. This happened in December 1933. Our squadron got to go in the northern part of the New Guinea where the Australian commandos were first frightened it. No, but we had secured the southern part of New Guinea at that time, so we had a pretty good base with First Nation. But the Australian commandos, when they needed supplies, we brought supplies to them. It got to the point that they were kind of getting overrun and asked to be repositioned. Our squadron got picked to make this rescue. The PBY has a wingspan of 104 feet, and we had to land in the Stuka River, which is 200 feet high. So we made 19 individual trips in there to get these people out. So we went in on shells at three, only 5 people, and no ordnance. We had to go in light to bring the big blow down. Each plane came out with 25 commandos and some more equipment. And they followed us, so that was 30 people on each PBY. Fortunately, there's no mishaps. We got them all out in a 5-day period. And they were happy. They had a base south of our team meeting. But our main concern after getting loaded, I had to keep them all forward. Then they just hung on to each other. And our main concern was this no debris coming down that river while we were trying to take off. And just pulled the whole river. But we did get them all out of there, and that was one of the biggest rescue operations I guess in the Pacific.
Greetings, folks, and welcome to another edition of History Up Close. We're very excited today to have this event again.
It's nice day outside, guy. I tell you, can't you not?
And brought to you by Healthcat Productions. Today, we're going to talk about one of the workhorses of the fleet during World War II, the PBY Catalina flying boat. And backed by popular demand is our wonderful, wonderful presenter, Kim Sheldon. Kim, take it away.
Thank you, Captain Gillum. Many airplane designs became famous during World War II, but few emerged from the carnage of that conflict as well loved and respected as the consolidated PBY Catalina. A pioneering design when it first flew in 1935, it was considered by many to be obsolete by the time the United States was thrust into World War II in 1941. But as often is the case, war is a come-as-you-are affair, and the PBY was what the Navy had on hand. Slow and ungainly, the PBY was an easy target for enemy fighters, but what it lacked in speed and agility, it more than made up for with long endurance, rugged construction, and versatility. The PBY went by many names:
Wingwalks painted.
T-Boat, Catalina, Black Cat, Mad Cat, Nomad, and Dumbo. But whatever it was called, if you were a seaman or airman downed in the ocean, floating in your Mae West or a rubber lifeboat, and the Catalina appeared overhead, it was a guardian angel personified. Its long endurance and range made it ideal as a reconnaissance and patrol aircraft. Its ability to carry 4,000 pounds of bombs, depth charges, or torpedoes made it ideal as a sub-hunter or a night intruder. And its ability to land and take off in the open ocean made it ideal as a rescue craft. It became a jack of all trades and served with every Allied Air Force in every theater of World War II, and served in whatever capacity it was asked to perform so well that in fact, after the war was over, it stayed in service with the military long after more modern and faster flying boats became available. Hi, I'm Lieutenant Commander Kim Sheldon, United States Navy, retired, and I'm pleased to be here to be your host again for another episode of History Up Close and talk to you about the PBY Catalina. Consolidated designed the PBY Catalina in response to a Navy requirement for a long-range flying boat that could fly non-stop from the west coast of the United States to Hawaii. Consolidated had previously built seaplanes for the Navy, the PY-1 and the P-2Y. PY-1 was actually the Navy's very first monoplane flying boat, but in a strange quirk of fate, although Consolidated designed the PY-1, Martin Aircraft Company got the contract to actually build it. The PY-1 was, as I said, the first monoplane. The next model the Consolidated design was the P-2Y. This was an innovative airplane. It had an enclosed cockpit, enclosed bow turret, and now engines that were, instead of being supported by struts were actually built into the leading edge of the wing, which is a dramatic decrease in drag for the airplane. Following on the P2Y came the X23Y, which was designed to answer the Navy's requirement for a long-range flying boat. The Navy, however, wanted more than just a patrol plane. They wanted also a bomber. So the P3Y became the PBY. P for patrol, B for bomber, and Y was the Navy's manufacturer suffix for consolidated. The PBY first flew as the P3Y in 1935, and after winning Navy contracts, went into production in 1936. PBYs rolled off the line, and from 1936 to 1940, evolved with a succession of models from the PBY-1, 2, 3, 4, and finally the PBY-5, which is what we have here in the museum. This was the most produced of all the PBY Catalinas, which totaled 3,300 from the time they went into production in 1936 until production ceased in 1945. Consolidated Aircraft, chaired by its founder Reuben Fleet, moved its factory from Buffalo, New York in 1935 to San Diego in time to begin production on the PBY for the Navy. Subcontracts were left to other companies, including Boeing of Canada in Vancouver, Vickers Aircraft in Montreal, and a new consolidated plant towards the end of the war was constructed in New Orleans. In addition, the Naval Aircraft Factory in Philadelphia produced a much modified and modernized version of the PBY, referred to as the PBN Nomad, which mostly went to the Soviet Union under Lend-Lease. To describe the PBY's external characteristics, most noticeable about its design was the high parasol-mounted wing. The hull and fuselage was suspended under by a single pylon, reinforced by a couple of struts on either side of the fuselage and wing. It was a twin-engine configuration powered by two Pratt & Whitney R1830 radial engines producing 1,200 horsepower apiece. What gave the aircraft its long range was that incredibly long wingspan. The wing was used to carry the fuel for the airplane, which was carried in the center wing section, totaled about 750 gallons, which gave the airplane tremendous endurance. In some cases, missions as long as 30 hours with that efficient lift-producing wing and all the fuel on board. The PBY's armament, as I mentioned earlier, included hardpoints underneath both wings for a variety of depth charges, bombs, and torpedoes. Usually they carried a combination of bombs and depth charges under each wing. Each station could carry a 500-pound bomb.
Don't need to be so quiet, but we're kind of concentrating on this thing, you know? Like we all do.
Torpedo, which weighed 2,000 pounds underneath one wing, and balanced that with 500-pound bombs underneath the other wing. A very versatile aircraft, so it could go out and hunt for a variety of targets. Defensive armament included a 30 caliber machine gun in the bow turret, two 50 caliber Browning machine guns in the waist blisters, the PBY-5 being the first of the series to incorporate this distinctive blister plexiglass bubble back there midships. And then a 30 caliber machine gun and a little hatch in the tail called the tunnel gun. Various models of the PBY modified that. Later models of the PBY replaced the single 30 caliber machine gun in the nose with a fisheye bubble turret that had two 30 caliber machine guns. The Navy asked Consolidated in 1940 about the possibility of an amphibian version of the PBY with retractable landing gear to enable it to land on or take off from land bases as well as water.
Now this airfix Stuka is a very nice kit. You know, I really enjoyed building this thing. It's, like I say, I don't think it's really finishes at all. I have not crossed it here. We just got to follow the instructions very careful. Don't get messed up.
The amphibian version, and we had, by the time World War II started, what we call the PBY-5A amphibian. This was the most versatile of all the Catalinas, even though it wasn't the most produced, but it was able to operate from land bases as well as from sea drones. The PBY-5A amphibian was thus also able to launch and beach itself on its own without the need for a large handling crew as in the flying boat versions. The airplane's construction was a semi-monocoque stressed-in aluminum skin riveted over a aluminum frame. Made a lot of use of fabric-covered surfaces to out of weight considerations. The rudders, the elevators, the ailerons were all fabric-covered with unbleached cotton linen, as well as about the aft 1/3 of the wing cord was also fabric covered. And these fabric sections of the aircraft were hand sewn and then doped with varnish to.
Okay, get the other side now. It don't take long to get this thing appreciated.
Yeah, I've covered the high points
fill in
of the
some of these,
aircraft.
like primer. It works like a primer. You start filling in with your appreciating.
Main hull down the main deck. So if you'll follow me, we'll go down there and pick up where I'm leaving off here. Every student naval aviator or student naval flight officer goes through about 8 weeks of aviation pre-flight indoctrination here at Naval Air Station Pensacola. Included in the course of instruction, of course, is about 2 weeks of land and water survival. In one of the classrooms in the old survival school here at Schools Command, when we walked into the classroom, we were confronted by this display built into the side of the building. The outside of the PBY was located on the outside, and the cutaway section was right there in the classroom. So as a young second lieutenant in the Marine Corps and a flight student here at Pensacola in 1978,
but now painting in these
I
ring
sat
walks
at a
right
desk
here.
next to this display.
I don't know if it gives you decals, I'll go ahead and paint it anyway.
Training here at Pensacola. The PBY internally, the one thing you want to notice about the aircraft right off the bat, and which this display puts to a good appearance, is the intricate construction, aluminum construction, where you see all the transverse strings and the longitudinal stringers. All of these are riveted together. Now this was a mass-produced airplane in the San Diego factory, but this was before automation. So every part of this airplane was handmade by skilled workmen, placing all of these hundreds of thousands of rivets. In fact, in order to make the rivets tighter when they put them in, installed them, they would actually keep them in a freezer before using them, so that when they installed them, they were cold, and as they would expand, they would make the joints especially tight. Remember, we're talking about flying boats here, so we use nautical terms to describe it. This is the bow, the pointy end of the airplane, if you will. The bow compartment was the first compartment in the airplane. There were 7 compartments total, starting with the bow. The bow observer had a defensive 30 caliber machine gun in this revolving turret. It was not a powered turret. He had to turn it manually. We also had a bomb aiming window here. It's open right now, but it had a louvered or corrugated door to protect it during landings and takeoff. Right inside the window, you'll notice on this display, it's complete with the Norden bomb sight. The Norden bomb sight became famous during World War II as the main tool by which the Army Air Forces conducted its strategic bombing for T-17s of Germany. But the Norden bomb sight was actually developed by the U.S. Navy to solve the trigonometry problem, how to drop a weapon from a moving aircraft and solve for distance and trajectory to make sure you hit your target. So the early PBYs had included the Norden bomb sight, which is a highly classified piece of equipment all through the war. Some people have often asked, what's this little circular port here? Believe it or not, it was a removable port so the gunner could take it out and reach his hand out in front and wipe off the windshield when it was fogged up by water. We got the aircraft mooring line, which they threw us in this position, coming back around here. This removable mooring post. Again, these are flying boats, so when you're on the water, you're basically a vessel. And then you had this compartment here for the dancer's anchor that the airplane often used when it had to land and moor itself someplace other than where the seaplane tender might be. The pilot's compartment is next as we go aft. And here you had the patrol plane commander in the left seat and the co-pilot in the right seat on elevated pedestal seats. Here the control yoke was actually a U-shaped yoke with 2 steering wheels on either side for the pilot and co-pilot. A basic instrument panel in front of them, and then the engine controls, the throttles, the mixture controls, and the propeller controls were located on the center console overhead. The pilots there was a walkway between them here to go into the next watertight compartment, which was the navigator and the radio man compartment. So here you see the navigator sitting here with his chart table and his parallel rules. The sailor next to him, one of the air crewmen, probably operating one of the early radar sets. You can't see it on this side, but the other side has one of the early radar arrays attached to the outside of the hull. Just opposite them on the starboard side, facing to starboard, is the radio mast position. Early on in the war, there wasn't a lot of talk or voice radio signals sent by long range, so the radio operator actually had to use a telegraph key and send messages via Morse code. Moving further aft from the navigator and the radio mast compartment is the in-flight kitchen and the flight engineer's position. Flight engineer was located on a suspended seat up inside the pylon structure. This got him out of the way of the rest of the crew and put him in a position where he had direct control of the engines in addition to the pilot. So he could fine-tune the engines, the mixture, and they had the fire extinguisher actuators for both engines in the event of an in-flight fire. He could basically do everything with the engines up there, and he had windows on both sides of the pylon, so he had the best view of what was going on with those engines on the wings than anybody else. So it was really a stroke of genius the way the designer of the PBY placed what we called then the mechanic, we call today the flight engineer. On the starboard side of the aircraft is the in-flight kitchen, and just behind that is an auxiliary power unit which provided electrical supply to the airplane. Now, right about this point, you see a bracket here and another one here. This is where the beaching gear for the flying boat would be attached when they wanted to bring the airplane out of the water. When the amphibian version came out, they replaced these with a huge housing here for one of the main wheels. The two wheels retracted into the sides of the airplane, and that stuck out quite a bit into this compartment. So I'm not sure what happened to the in-flight kitchen. It was probably moved someplace else. We'll go back a little further aft. This is the crew compartment. Because of the long endurance of their flight, they did have bunks in here for the crewmen to take crew rest while they're in flight. Oftentimes, when these were operating as flying boats and stationed in a protected anchorage and serviced by a seaplane tender, oftentimes a number of members of the crew would have to remain aboard the airplane to provide an anchor watch and maintain security, make sure the airplane wasn't taking on water. So this airplane really became their home on the water, the same way as a boat would for a boat owner. These bunks came in very handy too when they were rescuing survivors from ship sinkings or downed aircraft. They put medical cases, wounded people into these bunks and take care of them on the flight home. The PBY was manned by a crew of 8 or 9 air crewmen and officers. Moving back to what we called the weapons compartment, this is also where these very nice plexiglass blisters were located. It had kind of an eyelid arrangement here for opening and closing, and inside of each of these blisters were pedestal-mounted Browning M2 50 caliber machine guns for self-defense. The ones we have on this sample here have their ammunition fed through a box attached to the side of the gun. Later models of the PBY actually incorporated a fixed ammunition chute that was connected to magazines in the airplane. Each gunner had a C-shaped walkway around the gun so he could operate it and give it a lot of flexibility in protecting themselves against enemy aircraft or engaging with surface targets. The last compartment back aft here is called the tunnel compartment. There's actually a hatch underneath here that they could open up in flight, and there was a mounted 30 caliber machine gun here to provide the airplane with some ability to defend itself against aircraft coming up from 6 o'clock position or underneath. From 1936 to 1940, the U.S. Navy established patrol wings on both coasts of the United States, with a couple patrol wings in Hawaii and one over in the Philippines to cover the Far East. From 1939, when the war in Europe began, the United States started flying what they called neutrality patrols to enforce the Neutrality Act, which was basically in the Atlantic to keep the tabs on the movement of German naval units in the Atlantic, especially on our side of the Atlantic. And then they expanded that in early 1941 to include patrols in the Western Pacific and the South China Sea to keep tabs on Japanese naval activity. Frequently, those encounters between PBYs and Japanese fighters came close to shots being fired, but it was a very tenuous period. In 1940, with the war in Europe having Great Britain up to its neck in battle with Germany, the Royal Air Force obtained PBY-5 airplanes for their coastal command. The British found it easier to remember names of airplanes as opposed to designations, so it was actually the Royal Air Force that gave it the name Catalina, naming it after that little island off the coast of California. In May of 1941, the German super battleship Bismarck sortied into the North Atlantic with its escort, the heavy cruiser Prince Eugen, in a famous naval chase and battle that took place. The Bismarck sunk the HMS Hood, and what followed was a classic naval chase as Bismarck tried to make for Europe, the safety of French ports, and for a time he eluded the Royal Navy for almost 24 hours until a Royal Air Force Catalina discovered it and reported its position. And what followed, of course, was the famous battle in which Bismarck was finally damaged and brought to heel and sunk in May of 41. On December 7th, 1941, the Japanese sneak attack on Pearl Harbor caught both the wings at Ford Island and Kaneohe Bay Naval Air Station flat-footed and destroyed 52 out of 64 of the PBY Catalinas that were stationed there. What followed for the first 6 months of the war in the Pacific was a battle of attrition in the Southwest Pacific, and as the Japanese onslaught continued to conquer Singapore, the Philippines, the Dutch East Indies, and parts of New Guinea. PBY Catalina squadrons that survived the initial attacks saw their numbers dwindle greatly as they fought a retrograde action back towards Australia. Oftentimes they're put into use evacuating civilians from endangered areas, and then also trying to fly in under cover of darkness ammunition and food for surrounded American, Australian, English, and Dutch troops. On June 3rd, 1942, a VT-44 PBY-5A based in Midway Island discovered the advancing Japanese invasion fleet that was bound for Midway. What followed is that night, 4 planes from Midway, 4 PBYs, launched out to attack that invasion fleet with torpedoes at night. And the first indication the Japanese had that they were under attack was one of the torpedoes connecting with one of their oilers. It turned out to be the only successful torpedo attack of the entire Battle of Midway, conducted by those 4 PBYs from Midway on the night of June 3rd. The following day, June 4th, 1942, another PBY on patrol out of Midway spotted the first Japanese air raid inbound to Midway, and sent a very terse message back to Midway via wireless, saying many planes headed Midway. This was far in advance of any of those planes showing up on Midway's radar. This advance warning gave Midway precious additional time to get all of its aircraft off the ground, so that the first Japanese air raid against Midway found virtually no aircraft left on the ground to destroy. Following the end of the Battle of Midway, June 5th and June 6th, PBYs based in Midway again provided valuable service by going out and scouring the ocean for survivors from the multiple Navy squadrons that were involved in that famous
put it on our back, pal.
battle of the Pacific War. In the Aleutians, PBYs based in Dutch Harbor and later Adak Island conducted daytime bombing raids against the islands of Attu and Sitka, which had been captured by the Japanese, and continued that ongoing bombing harassment of Japanese positions until those islands, American territory, was finally taken back by the United States in 1943. In August of 1942, the United States went on the offensive in the Pacific with its invasion of Guadalcanal. Both U.S. Navy and Royal Australian Air Force Catalina supported the operation in Guadalcanal and the surrounding Solomon Islands with daytime bombing raids against Japanese fleet units, but found that the vulnerability of the PBY really discouraged their use in daytime. They just were too vulnerable to be caught in daylight by Japanese fighter aircraft. So what followed was a period where the United States and Australia decided to use the Catalina as a night intruder, typically launching just before sunset and flying a 14-15-hour night mission, returning to their base, whether it was a seaplane tender or a small harbor somewhere in the islands, and using radar altimeters and radar to navigate and fly low and slow, again using stealth coverage and painting the airplanes black, which gave them the nickname Black Cats. The Black Cats drew claws, and with either bombs or torpedoes, they made the nightly Tokyo Express, the train of Japanese ships going down the slot between the islands and the colonies to reinforce their garrisons on Guadalcanal, a very hazardous undertaking. It's hard or difficult to say how many American troops' lives were saved by virtue of the fact that not all the ammunition or the armaments or the food and supplies that Japanese troops needed got to where they were intended to go, and thereby spared Americans heavier losses than they did. By war's end, Black Cat operations conducted by the U.S. Navy and the Royal Air Force sank a total of 1,500 Japanese ships at their sites, totaling some 700,000 tons. As an interesting side story, in Australia, Qantas Airways obtained 5 Catalinas for use in what they called their double sunrise flights, going from Perth, Australia to Ceylon, or what we call Sri Lanka today. This was a 3,500-mile journey that took them 28 hours to fly. Because of the fuel required, extra fuel they had to take on to fly that distance, they were only able to carry a very little cargo and 3 passengers. And because most of the Indian Ocean was prowled upon by Japanese fighters, the airplanes had to take off in darkness and maintain radio silence for most of the trip. They were so heavily laden with fuel, in fact, that if they had lost a single engine in flight, they would have had to go down anytime in the first 10 hours. They called it a double sunrise flight because of the sheer length of the trip meant that the passengers got to see 2 sunrises between the time they left Perth and the time they arrived at Kagara Lake in Ceylon. From January 1942 to June of 1945 in the Atlantic, U.S. Navy, Coast Guard, and Royal Canadian Air Force Catalina squadrons covered the entire eastern seaboard from Newfoundland all the way down to Brazil to provide overhead anti-submarine warfare support for the convoys that were taking supplies, much-needed supplies, to England and Russia. On the other side of the Atlantic, Royal Air Force Catalinas did the same thing, covering the North Sea, the Bay of Biscay, and the Mediterranean. Advances in anti-submarine warfare technology, such as sonar, the first aerial sonobuoys, magnetic anomaly detectors,
I don't take long to appreciate this thing.
Torpedo called the Mark 24 Fido gave the Allies a technological edge over the German U-boat wolf packs that were trying to prey on convoys heading for Europe and back. By 1944, losses amongst U-boats had gotten so great that the Kriegsmarine U-boat chief, Admiral Carl Burnett, gave orders to his U-boat commanders that if they were caught on the surface, they were to fight it out on the surface with their deck guns rather than submerge and be subjected to a one-sided pummeling from the anti-submarine warfare aircraft. So German U-boats in the last year of the war started to spring up very heavy caliber anti-aircraft guns like the 37mm and 57mm guns, which made life for something as slow as the PBY pretty miserable. So they were discouraged from engaging in gunfights or gun duels with surface U-boats. In June of 1944, a squadron called BP-63 Mad Cats deployed the first PBYs equipped with a magnetic anomaly detector, which is basically a boom underneath the rudder that had a magnetometer, which would detect any anomalies in the Earth's magnetic field, like a large metallic object, say a submerged submarine. They deployed to Morocco and helped the Royal Air Force cover the approaches through the Straits of Gibraltar, catching German U-boats as they egress from the Mediterranean. By the end of the Battle of the Atlantic, PBYs in Allied forces, Royal Air Force, Royal Canadian Air Force, U.S. Navy, and Coast Guard had accounted for 20 of the 55 German U-boats that were sunk by aircraft in the entire war. Air-sea rescue was always part of the PBY's capabilities, and it was used throughout the beginning of the war through 1944 1943 when the Joint Chiefs of Staff agreed that a dedicated search and rescue or air-sea rescue organization, because of the size and scope of a sea ocean war, was just too much for the U.S. Coast Guard to handle alone. So the decision was made to create an organization within the United States Army Air Forces called Air Sea Rescue, and they would be equipped with, amongst other types, PBY Catalinas, which the Air Force referred to as the OA-10s. These OA-10s were taken from Navy contracts and turned over to the Air Force, given Air Force serial numbers. But the pilots and aircrew had to come here to NAS Pensacola and NAS Jacksonville to be trained in how to fly the Catalina. Dumbo was the nickname given to the PBY because of its large wing, similar resemblance to the Disney cartoon character, the flying elephants. Became a great term of endearment, and by the end of the war, thousands of servicemen, airmen, and sailors, victims of ship sinking, owed their lives to Catalina or Dumbo aircraft being available to land and pick them out of the water. On August 3rd, 1945, a Navy Catalina based in the Philippines discovered and picked up the first group of survivors from the sinking of the heavy cruiser USS Indianapolis east of the Philippines, which had been sunk by a Japanese submarine 5 days earlier after delivering its cargo, the first nuclear bomb, to the Air Force on Tinian. After World War II, Catalinas continued to serve in the Navy reserves and in training units until the early 1950s, when they were replaced by more modern and faster flying boats like Martin's PBM and Martin's P5M. The Air Force continued to use OA-10s for another 8 years following World War II until they were replaced with the new Grumman SA-16 Albatross amphibian. And likewise, the U.S. Coast Guard started replacing its Catalinas around 1949-1950 with the new Albatross, as well as a new contraption called the helicopter. Surprisingly, foreign militaries continued to use Catalinas provided under Foreign Military Assistance Program until well into the 1970s. They also found use as aerial forest fire fighting water bombers in Canada and North America, and for use as mission support aircraft in places like the Amazon, New Guinea, and Equatorial Africa. Interestingly, in 1971, ocean explorer and aquanaut Philippe Cousteau, the son of Jacques Cousteau,
fill in, that's appreciated. That's like a primer.
A pilot, purchased a ex-U.S. Navy PBY 6A Catalina, dubbed Calypso 2, and used it in their worldwide exploration. Sadly, in 1979, while taxiing on the Tagus River near Lisbon, Portugal, the airplane struck a sandbar, wrenching one of the propellers loose from its engine, and it cut through the cockpit, killing Philippe instantly. In conclusion, the PBY was a state-of-the-art aircraft when it was first designed in 1935, but was obsolete within 5 years. But it was what the Navy had on hand. It's what they had to fight with when the war was thrust upon us in 1941, and it did its job well. And countless Americans and Allied sailors, soldiers, and Marines and airmen owed their lives to the Catalina. And as one Army combat veteran once remarked, he said, "Whenever I see a PBY, I stand and salute." And now, if you have any questions regarding the PBY Catalina, I'll do my best to answer them.
Very much, Tim, for that outstanding presentation.
I don't take long
Catalina, a lot to talk about with this very quick aircraft. We've had some questions come in. Scott asks, how many survivors could it carry at one time in some of the Dumbo missions that it flew?
Well, a lot depended on how heavy the airplane was, and so forth. And if it had a full complement, which is so they could get as many as 20 passengers. Cash Barber, who gave the preface to this, was talking about a rescue mission on a separate river in New Guinea, where they took stay with a minimum crew and unloaded all their ammunition for that mission. But that was taken only for a long takeoff run. In the cases, you have to saying it's the first PBY machine, and too heavy to get into. They have to be
And Lou Humphrey commented, why would they carry a healthy supply of number 2 pencils on PBY?
That's a good question. That was a habit that PBY crewmen got into because these airplanes did not have flaps. With that big wing, big aerosol wing, and some wide chord as well, they frequently did what was called full stall landing, where they'd get down as low as they could, as slow as they could, and actually have to tail drive a little bit first. If they misjudged their timing with the crest and the trough of a wave, they could easily slam down pretty hard and pop some rivets. So everyone had a pencil in his pocket to use as a temporary plug to plug leaks and popped rivets or bullet holes if they took battle damage while doing their mission.
Robert asked, are any of PBY still flying today?
That's another good question there. Surprisingly, there are quite a few PBYs around the world flying. I've seen estimates as high as 70 well, not flying, but 70 airplanes total in museums. I think there's probably a dozen or two that are actually still flying. In terms of the actual flying boat model, the straight dash 5, this one we have here in Pensacola is the only straight dash 5 flying boat pattern. All the other ones that are either in museums or flying status still are the amphibian version, either the dash 5A or the dash 6A pattern.
And you mentioned that the PBYs are slow in the air, not really, can't really avoid air attack. Was there any real defense against air attack if you were a PBY pilot? How could you try to keep from getting shot down?
As we said, the basic maneuvers were very simple. Basically, if you were high flying PBY, you see it walking off an account, going back to the Battle of Midway, for example, where the reconnaissance planes were spotting parts of the Japanese fleet, and they'd draw either Japanese fighters or anti-aircraft fire, and they'd start for the safety of the cloud, get into a big cloud and fly an instant for a while until the interesting lane. If you're caught in a clear sky, either without clouds or at night or daytime with clear ceiling and visibility, the best maneuver was to turn into their attackers and confuse or make their gunfire solution more difficult, or get down close to the water where you didn't have to worry about somebody coming up from underneath you. But the 6 o'clock position on most airplanes, including the PBY, was your most vulnerable position. So they get down low and slow and again turn into the attack and try to complicate things for the enemy fighters as much as you could.
Okay, and we have time for one final question. Stuka asked, did the U.S. Air Force's PBYs flown in the gunboat missions, did they carry defensive armament like the Navy counterparts?
Yes, they did. The 0810 is what the Army Air Force designation for the PBY was. We're armed with the same kind of armament that and Coast Guard PBY flew with. One or two 30 caliber machine guns in the nose, one in the tunnel position, window in the tail, and then two single 50s in the waist positions that manage the effective lifters. Thanks very much for joining us on this episode of History Up Close.
Almost done, guys. Almost done.
With social media for our next subject coming up in about 2 weeks. Thanks.
Yeah, it's not done, guys. On the appreciating part. Turn it back on the back now. And right now I'm just kind of filling in the plastic a little bit, the light airbrush application, the thing here. That seems like a primer. I think this is Rudol's machine. King of the Stuka pilots. See how you filled in here? A little more filling in here, a little more, we'll knock off and let this bad boy dry and use the finish colors. A little bit more. Okay, team, we're done here. Okay, guys, here's what we did. I got all appreciated right here, as you can see. Oh, this light pick up a lot better. All appreciated, ready to go. I think it's getting bright. There we go. Okay, we'll take it back to the camera here and finish up the video here. Okay, that was fun. Here's what I did on it. I don't know if that camera picked up enough on it, but here it is right here. More room for entirety. How much I got done on it. And that's going to be, I believe, sky blue, not sky blue, sky color. No. Hall brow, we call it. Hollow brow. And it's going to be dark German green on top. No splinter camouflage. I think this is one they used back in 1939. Boodles used. I think when they attacked Poland. Oh, yes, the kit comes with swastikas, too. That's one thing you don't get no more with kits no more. You got to make them yourself. And, where are they at? Oh, yeah, somewhere in here. Yeah, they're over here. I'll show it to you. Wire on the air here. Excuse my back, boys. Huh. I got lucky. They gave me, yeah, this is a rarity. You don't see this very much. They gave me 2 decals here. As old as kits is I went ahead and spaced some decal monitor on here anyway. So that's a very good bet. When you mess around these old kits, about 40, 50, 60 years old, always get your can of this. Decal bonder by testers. There's other stuff out there. You can't get decal bonder, just go ahead and give it a coat of gloss varnish or flat varnish. Aerosol or airbrushed. There's the swastikas right there. Thank you, Airfix. Back in those days, people didn't put a beef in for swastikas. Just an idea about people don't like it because the Holocaust and the junk went through those days. That was back in the past. It's history. You know. Here's the 2 pilots that came with the kit. It took about a couple days to put these together. They've all been primed, ready to be painted and put in place in here. I put everything in the bag in here. All my clear parts, everything here, decals here. So I want to show you that the kit came with the swastikas, which I was very deeply honored and impressed that they did that. Of course, back in those days, they got away with stuff like that. There no complaints at all in the complaint department. But it's history, fellas. History has nothing to do with all it. And it's just people just not are willing to forgive, but make sure you don't forget. Okay, that's about going on here. About something else that I gotta clean up a little bit. I had this vacuum form kit for the PBM Mariner by Airplanes. I built a long time ago. That's the vacuum farm kit. I built that many years ago. Many years ago. I think this is Kilauea Naval Air Station's Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, back in 1955. The original one showed you the Atlantic version with gold gray and white. But I made it the post World War II. That's one of Martin's first big flying boats he had when the Mars came out. That's when the Martin 170 came out. That was the Mars. Okay, already showed you the Dauntless. I gotta go ahead and take the baskings off, get the prop painted, get the bombs all painted, paint that arrestor hook, paint the inside of the die flaps, and done. And yeah, that's a good kit. Those Merrick kit Dauntless kits are pretty good. You better have some room to put those things in there. I don't know how it got this trailer, but it got here. On the Lancaster, I got the cows on here. I went ahead and put some sprue glue on there. I need to sand that sprue glue off there. When it's pretty, it needs to be sanded out. I did that last night, so it's 24 hours. This thing's been on there. So make sure we put sprue glue on there as a filler. Let it dry 24 hours or longer. And I'll tell you, if you don't let it dry, you go ahead and start doing some sanding. It will just come off as if it was just a piece of a piece of rubber strip. That's what it looked like. It looked like you just sanded off a piece of rubber off your plane. It'll come off in its entirety. So let it dry so all that solvents can go in there and fill in. And when it's aroma clear, you can't smell it. It's dry. And I'm gonna be working that tonight too and get that thing all pre-shaded. I'm gonna mask a couple windows in there. And get started on that too, get that wrapped up. Okay, that's about it for live action. It's probably been on here about an hour or so. It takes time to paint these things, imagine. So I got it all done. I'm gonna let it dry and go ahead and start get my paints all rounded up, get my all my colors, my paints, dark green and yellows and a sky color, not sky color, but hollow brow. Yeah. This is Humbro, not Humbro, but I got all kinds of hollow brow. This is XF23. Wish to call that number for Tamiya. It says light blue, but it's hollow brow. It's pretty close to it. Yep. Use all that up. That'd be good. That's all good there. Boy, I got thousands and thousands of paints in here. I think we all got that. I got plenty of that, so I'm all right. Already brought out the colors already. Okay, guys, this is about the conclusion for tonight. I'm sorry I didn't rap too much when I was painting this thing. I was just concentrating on it, listening to the history of the PBY Catalina. You probably heard it too on there, so I figured something to fill in the void of me not rapping away, you know. But I'll tell you, I'm really pleased with this airfix Stuka. It's a wonderful airplane, guys. I don't know if I want to get the trumpeter one or not. There's something about it that maybe I know it's probably a later model of Stuka, but it looks bigger than this. 124 scale. Somebody's off, and I don't know if airfix is off or not. This airfix one is spot on. I think they did a good job. And it goes together very well too. Just got to watch the instructions, and like anything, you got to trial the 50 parts first before you glue them. Okay, one more last gander of the mighty Trumpets of Jericho, Stuka. Story time, guys. Before we close off here, I worked for a guy out of California years ago. I just got out of the Navy, and I got a job laying block with him. I got a job as an apprenticeship. I was an apprentice, and I become a journeyman when I went to school and everything, laying block. And I've been doing that for about 30, 40 years, been laying block. That's probably why I'm so healthy here. I'm 81 years old now. I feel healthy as anybody else. I can roll in the grass and roll in the hay anywhere, you know. I'm just got a young heart and got too much to live for, and I enjoy life. I'm not going to waste it. And I worked for Mr. Ed Stober. He had a brother named Billy Gruner. That was his half brother. They both had the same mothers, but different fathers. All during World War II, you know. And I remember Ed one time says, work's slowing down a little bit. He had that German accent that he had. He always called me Frank, Frank, Frank. Frank, you go to Billy's house today. I said, are we working today yet or what? Yes, you are. Everybody else I sent home, you work with Billy. You like Billy. I never met his brother before in my life. Well, here's one for the books, guys. I went to his house, introduced to his brother. When I first walked into his house, it looked like I was walking into a museum of natural history of Germany. He had stew pots, Nazi flags. I wasn't offended by it. It was history. Then what caught my eye, he built a Stuka out of 21,000th gauge aircraft aluminum. It was built from the plans from the original Junkers. And he was a Stuka pilot during the war. I didn't know these things. And as soon as I seen that Stuka right there, I didn't even bother to shake his hand or nothing. I just walked over there and gave it this. Knowing that's not made out of wood, knowing it's not made out of paper, but also knowing it's not made out of plastic. So Billy Gruner walks up to me. You like Stuka? I saw those Stukas. They're a very beautiful airplane. I flew Stuka during war. I was no kidding. I said, Billy, where'd you get this at? I said, I built that myself. You gotta be kidding me. And he says, I show you. Come and say, here, Schnell. So I walk over, he pulls out a drawer, he had some old plans. He sped them up, and sure enough, that's what it was. He says, you want to build? I said, Billy, I don't have the tools for that. Because that requires lathes. That requires a lot of precision tools that are powered. And you got to have calipers, protractors, everything, take measurements, everything. I have all those. He showed me to his garage where he built it at. And he says, you can use plans you want to, make out of wood you want. I almost did. I said, Bill, I got so much stuff, I don't have time for that. And he goes, okay. Then he starts talking about the war and things like that. I spent almost 3 hours talking to this man. And he told me about the Stukas, and I learned a lot about the Stukas from Billy Gruner. He says, I said, boy, I bet the G-force hit you guys really bad during those dives. He says, yeah. He goes, we have something you Americans don't have. So what is that? Ingenuity. I go, oh. He goes, we have a gyro system which automatically is the altimeter. It's like an automatic pilot. We can set it at a certain altitude. When you go into a dive, we dive straight down, 180-degree dive, down. No 7-degree stuff, straight down. Better results that way. Pull out of that dive, you black out, and then it automatically pulls out of the dive. You wake up out of your blackout, shake your head a couple of times, look behind your canopy, and there's your target. You hit it right on the spot. Because a lot of the Stuka pilots had a lot of problems that, a lot of capillaries are breaking in their face, the veins and stuff, and it's the G-force, they hit those guys pretty hard. And a lot of them got the case of the, what do you call it, the test of coordination. Not Raja test, my God, what do you call that word? Schneider test. Yeah. Give them a lot of Schneider. The reflexes are off and everything because of the, must have probably some damage, I don't know. But after the dive bombing situations over with, they use those tank busters. He says, "Oh, you blow those tanks up like heck." He said, "There." It took a very beautiful airplane. It is. He was a wonderful man, And he goes, "When I go to war, I don't think about people. All I think about is the airplane, or the ship, or ground personnel who are taking out our boys." And he says, "You don't, and mostly in war, you don't think about the people because you do that, it'll really bother you. You think about the airplane you're going to destroy and stuff," which made perfect sense to me. So that's my story about running in with Billy Gruner, the Stuka pilot. He was a great guy. And so I worked him, went down there, tore down a bunch of scaffold, loaded up, took it to the yard, and went home, told my wife about that. She goes, "Well, you got to be kidding." Oh, no, kidding not. That shows you we live in a very, very small world. A lot of great people. The man wasn't racist at all. He was a very nice man. He didn't like the Fuhrer. He told me that. He said no one liked him. I said, "Ed, why don't you guys should have shit canned the goddamn guy. I says, "Frank, you don't understand. Your freedom's taken away from you like this." I said, "When you're disarmed," and he says, it's like the odds are against you. There's not a thing you can do about it. All you can do is silently hate the guy. But he was a nice man, a very nice man. They're good people. I love German people. They're very good people. Okay, that's enough for the story of the Stuka. Enough for the appreciating of the Stuka. I will call this video number 2. I only made one video of it. That's why I found out this was a fun build, not a group build. So we got number 3 coming up. I'll probably have her clothes on. I figure I have it wrapped up in 4 videos. Okay, tonight I'm going to go ahead and work on my Lancaster and get that sprue glue that I applied last night. Get that all sanded off, give it a good, and prepare it for same thing here, appreciating and filling in. Yeah. Oh, I got to get on Chris's classic 101 group build. Gotta get that done. It's Fake Day Miles signing off. Make Mom happy. Take care of little ones. So see you guys tomorrow for the next video. Bye, boys. Take care of yourself.